China has purged several generals. Beijing says they were corrupt.
It's the biggest purge of China's military personnel since the chaotic Mao Zedong era.
Xi Jinping just eliminated 9 of his top generals in what is the biggest military purge since Mao Zedong. In one ruthless sweep, the People's Liberation Army just lost its most powerful figures to a purge, driven by fear and meant to consolidate Xi's weakening grip on power. For over a decade, President Xi Jinping has reshaped China's institutions to serve one goal: absolute loyalty to him. Now, that obsession has triggered a purge so large that it has rocked China's army. Today, we'll reveal how Xi's obsession with loyalty is destroying China, and why these purges point to deeper fractures inside the CCP. Let's start with the bombshell itself. On October 17th, China's Defense Ministry detonated a political bomb when it announced that 9 top-level generals were being dismissed. At the top of the list was General He Weidong, the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, and one of the only 2 men standing between Xi Jinping and full control of the PLA. He was removed without warning in what was a bold move that Xi orchestrated to make a point. With him out of the way, Xi is almost entirely unopposed, and his political power has skyrocketed. Alongside him, several senior commanders were also purged in rapid succession. These were not background figures. They were key figures in China's military. They were the men who ran the rocket force, oversaw the Navy, the ground forces, and the People's Armed Police. Together, they formed the spine of China's military power, and Xi snapped it, just like that. This wasn't just pruning the tree, he basically hacked the trunk off. In the next few minutes, we'll dive into the specifics of these elite generals and why they were perceived as threats. For now, you don't even need me to tell you that this kind of action is not routine. Frankly, it is unprecedented. Removing this many top generals at once from the most sensitive branches of national defense, including the nuclear arsenal, signals a crisis at the core of the nation. These men controlled launch codes, the war plans, and the internal security grid, yet Xi disposed of them in a single afternoon. Their sudden disappearance reveals something far more dangerous than corruption. It reveals fear and panic. Regardless of how the CCP wants to spin this, this is more than just disciplinary action. It is an action that reveals that Xi is clearly no longer confident in the loyalty of his own top brass. And when a leader starts fearing the very people who protect him, the system itself begins to fracture. That's the state of the mighty CCP as it is right now. But why has Xi been so worried about his general's loyalty? Well, frankly, that's because China's mighty leader is now more exposed than he's ever been. His once unshakable grip on the CCP feels like it's starting to slip, and the signs are everywhere. In his head, if there was ever a time to launch a coup or dispose of him, it would be now, and he's jumping the gun and getting ahead of any rival action before that happens. It sounds very presumptuous, sure, but hey, those who live by the sword always know that they will die by that same sword. The difference is that Xi is just not ready to die yet. That being said, let's dive into the factors that have softened Xi's grip on power and see just how badly the deck is stacked against him. That may explain all the paranoia bubbling deep inside of the Chinese president. Honestly, one look at China in 2025 and you can see that things are quite different now. For over a decade, Xi has ruled with unmatched authority. His face on every screen and his words drilled into every meeting. But the system fueling his power is running out of steam. China's economy, the heart of his legitimacy, is stalling. As the economic problems worsen, his power dwindles. Right now, youth unemployment sits at 15.7%, with 11 million graduates flooding WeChat with bitter jokes about Xi's great rejuvenation, which promises jobs but delivers empty wallets. China's property market is also collapsing, and the numbers are pretty brutal. New home prices fell at the sharpest rate in nearly a year, shaking consumer confidence and dragging down household spending. Major developers like Evergrande and Country Garden are still drowning in debt, with Evergrande's liabilities topping $300 billion and millions of units left unfinished. Across the country, there are an estimated 70 million empty apartments, many half-built in cities that now resemble ghost towns. Local governments, which rely heavily on land sales for revenue, are facing budget shortfalls, and construction activity has stalled in key regions. For Xi Jinping, who once tied national pride to real estate growth, this collapse is more than economic. It is political. It undermines the promise of stability, exposes the limits of his top-down control, and fuels public frustration at a time when he can least afford it. The property sector was supposed to be a symbol of China's strength. Now it is a glaring reminder of how things quickly can unravel when trust fades and the systems start to buckle. Inside the Communist Party, the loyalty equation is changing. Xi has crushed rivals for years, but new tensions are simmering. In Guangdong, a $2.1 trillion economic powerhouse, officials are quietly sidestepping Beijing's strict directives and cutting local trade deals instead. To add to that, whispers have been spreading about the Shanghai clique, wealthy elites who once backed Xi but now blame him for declining economic growth rates. It isn't an open rebellion, but it's enough to make Xi start sweating. For a man who demands total control, even quiet defiance feels like a knife in the back. The global stage isn't helping the situation, as Xi's strongman image is already fading quickly. US sanctions on 30 Chinese tech firms are choking off chips and AI tools, slashing drone exports by 22%, and costing billions of dollars. In the South China Sea, Japan and Australia are holding joint naval drills with warships that openly mock China's claims, while Xi's navy hesitates, waiting for his approval. And this mocking and taunting behavior is being carried out at home as well. The mood on the streets isn't calm anymore. In Hainan, hundreds of thousands of factory workers are facing layoffs as contracts dry up. One worker even set fire to a poster of Xi in a video that spread like wildfire online. On university campuses, students are tuning out of Xi's thought classes, with attendance in Beijing reportedly down by nearly a third. And the pressure isn't just coming from the streets. Foreign investment has dropped to its lowest level in 2 decades. Party officials in coastal provinces are quietly stepping down, and military bases in Xinjiang are reporting discipline problems. Xi's usual tools of fear, slogans, and purges aren't landing like they used to. The system he built to obey him is now hesitating, questioning, and in some corners, resisting. All of this chaos is new territory, something that not too long ago would have been unthinkable. Just a few years ago, Xi Jinping stood like a colossus over China's political landscape. With no rivals at all, his China dream had captured the national imagination, and the party had rewritten the rules to let him rule indefinitely. In 2017, foreign diplomats whispered about Emperor Xi. At home, officials scrambled to memorize his speeches. Tech platforms raced to censor even the faintest of criticism. It was very different from what's happening now. Fear wasn't just ambient, it was institutional. Back then, the economy was roaring. China's factories were humming. Its tech giants were expanding, and the Belt and Road Initiative was reshaping global trade routes. Xi's grip on power wasn't just about surveillance or slogans, it was about results. Rising incomes, booming cities, and a sense of national pride gave his rule a sheen of inevitability. But now that sheen is cracking. The same centralized control that once projected strength now looks brittle. The youth, the very generation raised under Xi's shadow, are tuning out. They scroll past party propaganda, posting memes mocking state slogans, and dreams of emigrating rather than serving the motherland. These are the signs that Xi is seeing, signs of his weakening reign. And with matters this tense and his power under threat from all sides, Xi has turned his attention to the actual tool that could be used against him if things escalate: the military. It is within the People's Liberation Army that he sees his strongest rivals, his staunchest opponents, and his biggest opposition. Cleaning house here means he can stall any opposition and buy himself precious time to get his house in order. This is the thinking that led to the dismissal of the 9 top generals, including his own second-in-command and loyalist, General He Weidong, and Director Mia Hua, one of the most powerful figures in the PLA. To fully understand why he just rushed to clean up the army, we need to understand his decades-long mission to control the PLA. When you take a step back and look at this from a wider lens, this is just the latest step in a slow, deliberate plan to make the People's Liberation Army and the country answer only to him. When Xi took power in 2012, one of his main goals was to make sure the Communist Party was always in control of China's military. He believed that whoever commanded the army controls the country. He often repeats a saying from Mao Zedong: "The party commands the gun." For Xi, this is not just a quote from history. It is the foundation of his rule. He believes that if the party loses control of the military, it could lose everything. That's why it has always been a priority for him from the beginning. You see, the PLA is not like your ordinary national army. It does not belong to the people or the state. Every soldier, general, and department ultimately answers to the party, and Xi sat at the very top of this command structure. In theory, that meant the military should obey him completely, but in reality, it was a lot messier than that. Back then, the PLA had become wealthy, powerful, and independent. It had its own networks of influence and ways of operating that made the party leaders uneasy. China's rapid growth and military modernization had given officers more freedom. Because of this, some started building power that did not depend on the party. For a leader focused on centralizing power, that independence from the officers was a threat. It quickly became clear what Xi had inherited from the previous leader, Hu Jintao, was a military that looked strong on paper, but was divided in loyalty. Many senior officers owed their positions to Chu Chaihao and Guo Boxiong, who had served as vice chairman of the Central Military Commission before Xi. These men built vast networks where promotions were often bought or earned through favors rather than skill. Xi saw this as a serious problem. Loyalty was going to individuals, not the party. This was a violation of everything he believed. To Xi, that was a ticking bomb. He studied what happened in the Soviet Union and decided that losing control of the army meant losing the state. He wasn't about to let history repeat itself. Armed with this belief, Xi made the military his top priority from day one. He spoke constantly about absolute loyalty and discipline, but his words were not enough. He needed action. Within 2 years, he launched one of the largest anti-corruption campaigns in Chinese history. Under his guidance, in 2014, General Chu Chaihao was arrested for taking huge bribes for promotions. Unfortunately, the general died before his trial. A year later, General Guo Boxiong was sentenced to life in prison. By acting decisively in this manner, Xi sent a strong message that loyalty to the party and to him was more important than personal connections or skill. With some good old fear instilled in the ranks, officers began reciting Xi's speeches in meetings, and his portrait started appearing in the barracks. The old culture, where personal influence mattered more than obedience, was wiped out. These arrests started a larger transformation. For years, the military had believed it could act independently as long as it did not challenge the party. Xi ended that belief. He wanted an army that was strong, modern, and completely loyal. To achieve this, he reshaped the PLA from the top down. He reorganized entire departments to weaken old power centers. The General Staff Department was broken into smaller units that reported directly to the Central Military Commission. New branches, such as the Strategic Support Force and the Rocket Force, were created to focus on space, cyber, and missile operations. And officers with deep ties to old networks were replaced with younger, loyal leaders. Basically, the military got a complete makeover. But this wasn't enough. Xi needed ideological changes to cement the new culture. To that end, political education became a key part of his plan. Soldiers studied Xi Jinping thought on strengthening the military, which combines ideology, nationalism, and obedience. Party committees within the army were strengthened so that political officers could oversee commanders. The message was simple. The PLA exists to serve the party first and everything else second. Essentially, if you don't salute Xi's photo before breakfast, you might as well skip the meal. To consolidate his power amidst these reforms, Xi also positioned himself as the face of China's military strength. State media portrayed him as the core of the armed forces. His visits to bases were televised with soldiers pledging loyalty. Images of him inspecting troops or shaking hands with pilots became symbols of unity between the party and the army. Xi was not just leading the military, he was shaping its identity in a new age. Even with these steps, Xi still did not fully trust the military, so he kept on digging. Investigations soon found officers with secret accounts, hidden properties, and misused funds. The Rocket Force, which controlled China's most advanced missiles, was among the worst offenders, and the list of crimes was endless. Some officers took bribes for contracts, while others misused defense funds. To Xi, this was more about loyalty, not money. If the generals in charge of nuclear weapons could not be trusted, no part of the military was safe. This concern changed how he led. In his mind, loyalty became something that had to be constantly tested. New inspection teams were installed, political commissars gained more power, and officers worked under constant supervision. Even small mistakes could be seen as signs of disloyalty. Xi's own crazy life experiences shaped this approach. Believe it or not, his father had been purged during Mao's time, and that's when Xi learned that trust in politics is fragile. Because of that, he learned that the only loyal soldier is the one whose neck you're stepping on, so he made an effort to hold complete control. And by the time we get to the mid-2020s, Xi had near total control. By that time, he had removed at least 78 senior PLA officers of 2-star rank or higher. And yes, this includes members of the Central Military Commission. To make sure that people never forgot, he would routinely shake things up. In July of 2023, he launched another purge. The head of the Rocket Force, General Li Wuchao, and his political commissar, Xu Zhongbo, were quietly removed from office on allegations of financial mismanagement. Rumors pointed to $15 billion in misspent funds and fake missile parts. It was reported that some warheads were filled with silicone instead of fuel. That same year, Defense Minister Li Shangfu disappeared after similar scandals tied to equipment procurement. Xi's fix was the same: install outsiders who wouldn't dare step out of line. He was signaling that loyalty mattered more than skill. All of this happened when Xi didn't even feel particularly threatened. So now, as his grip weakens, you can imagine the pressure he feels to tighten it once again. And this brings us to this recent purge. On October 17th, Chinese leadership announced a stunning shakeup. 9 of the military's most powerful officers were suddenly removed and charged with crimes that guaranteed their expulsion from the party. It was not just a corruption sweep, it was a decapitation. Let's look deeper into who they were, the power they held, and why Xi decided they had to go. The first and the most shocking was General He Weidong. He was the vice chair of the Central Military Commission, a Politburo member, and the man responsible for coordinating joint operations across air, sea, and land. He was not just another general. He was Xi's operational twin, the second most powerful man in the Chinese military. Over 500,000 troops operated under his command in the eastern and southern theaters, which covers flashpoints like Taiwan and the South China Sea. He also had influence over promotions, allowing him to potentially and quietly build a network of loyal officers. To Xi, that kind of reach looked too much like ambition. It also made the general a rival that other people could back. So, He Weidong was completely removed. With him gone, the military lost its top coordinator for multi-branch missions overnight. But Xi also eliminated his most immediate rival. Next came Admiral Miao Hua. As the PLA's top political commissar, his job was to make sure the party came first. From submariners to fighter pilots, Miao controlled the ideological heartbeat of the entire force. He shaped promotions and loyalty standards across all branches. That kind of power does not just enforce discipline, it creates influence. And influence, in Xi's world, means risk. Miao's removal stripped the military of its main ideological enforcer and sent a warning to anyone else who thought they were untouchable. Then there was He Hongjun. He led the political work department, which handles loyalty training for hundreds of thousands of troops. That made him both valuable and dangerous. Xi likely saw him as someone capable of spotting unrest or quietly organizing it. Wang Xiaobin was next. As executive vice director of the Joint Operations Command Center, he was one of the sharpest minds behind China's military planning. He coordinated air, sea, and land operations, from small patrols to full-scale war games. He understood the PLA's weaknesses and how to fix them. But in a system built on loyalty, independent thinkers rarely last very long. His elimination is proof of this. Then came Lin Xiangyang, the man in charge of the Eastern Theater Command. His unit focused directly on Taiwan and oversaw about 200,000 troops trained for airstrikes, naval blockades, and amphibious landings. That level of control made him one of the most powerful field commanders in China. His removal on the same day as He Weidong was no coincidence. It was a warning, plain and simple, and the elimination of yet another rival. Qian Shutong was another key figure. As the political commissar of the ground force, he controlled loyalty across nearly 1 million soldiers. His job was to make sure the army stayed faithful to the party, not local loyalties or internal networks. That kind of influence could either rally factions or challenge them. Xi did not wait to see which way it would go. By removing Qin, he tightened his grip on the largest branch of the military. Next was Yuan Huachi. He served as the political commissar of the Navy, overseeing about 250,000 sailors. His position shaped how China projects power across the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. But that reach also made him capable of forming his own naval bloc, loyal to him instead of Xi. His removal brought the Navy back under tighter political control. Then there was Wang Huobin, the man who commanded the rocket force. He oversaw China's entire military arsenal, including more than 1,000 nuclear warheads. That made him one of the most powerful men in the country. But with that power came danger. Xi could not allow anyone with control over nuclear weapons to be seen as even slightly unreliable. Wang was replaced by a political loyalist, putting China's nuclear forces firmly under Xi's personal control. Finally, there was Huang Chuning, who led the armed police force. This unit of more than 600,000 troops handles border control, riot suppression, and the protection of party elites. In a crisis, they could shift the balance of power in China itself. That made Wang far too influential. His removal locked down the one security branch that could ever pose a threat from within. Even Stevie Wonder can see that none of these removals was random. Each one was calculated and precise, aimed at cutting down anyone who could build their own power base. Xi did not just clean the house, he reset the system. What the world saw was not a reshuffle or a disciplinary sweep, it was a complete rewrite of how power operates in China's military. The crazy part of all of this is that the timing wasn't just important, it was as calculated as it gets. Xi Jinping launched this purge just days before the Central Committee's plenum, one of the most powerful political gatherings in China. This isn't your average meeting. It's where the party decides who rises, who falls, and what direction the country will take for years to come. Every promotion, every reshuffle, every major policy starts here. By striking before the plenum, Xi didn't just remove people, he cleared the board. Generals who might have backed rival factions or questioned his decisions were gone. Any heat he might have felt because of the current state of things is gone, because there's no one left powerful enough to dare to hold him accountable. In their place are now loyalists, men whose careers depend on his approval and whose votes would fall exactly where he wants them to. It's like a CEO firing the board of directors before a big vote. It totally removes room for debate and gives rise to yes men. And this isn't the first time he has played the timing card. Back in 2019, just before the fourth plenum, Xi quietly sidelined several officials tied to factional networks. These weren't removed with fanfare, but they were pushed far enough from the spotlight to lose influence. That cleared the way for his agenda to pass without resistance. The same playbook, just with higher stakes. Now, however, it wasn't mid-level bureaucrats. It was the military's top brass. The scale is bigger, the purge sharper, and the consequences deeper. What used to be political maneuvering is now full-blown consolidation. The purge has also sent a bigger political message. The PLA is not just an army. It is a political institution designed to protect the party first. By showing that even top officers can be removed, Xi warned all military branches that obedience is required. By targeting leaders in every area, Xi showed that no part of the military is safe from scrutiny, reinforcing that loyalty is the only protection. When you really look at the situation, this purge says a lot about how Xi Jinping sees power. To him, the party's survival depends on one thing above all else: keeping a tight grip on the military. Modern weapons, big budgets, and shiny new technology are all secondary. What matters most is loyalty. A general can command nuclear missiles or entire fleets, but the moment his loyalty wavers, he's gone. The rule is simple: loyalty protects, disloyalty destroys. But that kind of control comes at a cost. Many of the officers who vanished weren't just paper pushers. They were some of the smartest minds in the system: strategists, engineers, and planners who helped turn the People's Liberation Army into one of the most capable forces on the planet. These were the people who linked satellites to missiles, drones to warships, and data to battlefield decisions. Replacing them with obedient loyalists might reduce the risk of dissent, but it also blinds the system. Obedience can hold things together, but only until the first real test comes. Modern warfare requires speed and initiative. Whether it's a standoff near Taiwan, a border clash in the Himalayas, or a tense encounter in the South China Sea, decisions are made in seconds. Yet fear now defines the PLA's culture. Officers hesitate. They think twice before acting, worrying more about politics than tactics. They wait for orders that sometimes never come. And when fear replaces initiative, even the best-equipped army starts to lose its edge. That's the paradox of Xi's control. On paper, the PLA is impressive. It has stealth jets and carrier groups, cyber units, and an expanding space program. China's defense budget even hit almost $250 billion this year, second only to the US. But underneath all of that hardware sits a culture of anxiety. History has seen this movie before. In the 1930s, Stalin's purges gutted the Soviet officer corps, leaving the Red Army unprepared for Germany's invasion. Xi's campaign isn't quite on that scale, but the effects are similar. Slower innovation, cautious leadership, and a command structure that moves only when it's told to. The consequences stretch beyond the battlefield. Defense projects stall when key people disappear. Ambitious officers learn that silence is safer than brilliance. The message spreads through every rank. Don't stand out, don't question, and definitely don't look too confident. It's a culture that keeps Xi's power intact, but at the cost of flexibility. In a real crisis, that kind of rigidity can be deadly. And let's be honest, this isn't some clean sweep where everyone suddenly falls in line because the boss said so. Inside the PLA, resentment likely lingers. Generals like Hue Weidong didn't climb alone. They built networks of loyal officers and aides. When they vanish, their followers don't just disappear too. Some quietly drag their feet, delay orders, or fudge reports to stay safe. Now, this might seem trivial, but enough of these acts can clog up an entire military machine. Others take bigger risks. For example, one disloyal colonel with access to missile systems could cause chaos. Xi knows that, which is why surveillance inside the barracks is at an all-time high. Cameras in mess halls, loyalty pledges at dawn, digital monitoring around the clock, it's all there. But fear is a double-edged sword. Soldiers who salute Xi by day might curse him by night. The more he purges, the more he risks turning loyalists into quiet skeptics. It's like squeezing a balloon. You can control the shape for a while, but push too hard, and it'll burst. China still commands one of the most advanced militaries in the world, but the culture Xi has built values obedience over originality, caution over courage, and survival over skill. It might secure the party's grip, for now, but it kills the spark that modern warfare demands. When the top gets shaken, the tremors reach every base and command post. Soldiers learn to measure every word and every gesture. Competence earns respect, but loyalty guarantees survival. Discipline built on fear doesn't create strength. It creates paralysis. Every decision now passes through a political filter, slowing momentum until hesitation becomes second nature. It's not just the military. This mirrors how China itself operates. The party rules through censorship, surveillance, and endless political campaigns. The same logic runs through the PLA. Officers know that even a hint of doubt could end their careers, so they stay quiet and play it safe. But no army wins by playing it safe. Victories go to those who act fast and adapt under pressure. In today's PLA, even simple field decisions need clearance from above. Reporting problems feels dangerous. Raising concerns feels like suicide. What's left is an army that looks sharp in parades but hesitates when the shooting starts. The danger is obvious. A sudden clash in the Taiwan Strait would demand instant judgment. If commanders freeze, a small incident could spiral into something far bigger. High-tech weapons don't matter if the people controlling them are too afraid to use them decisively. Xi's leadership style makes that risk worse. He has a reputation for micromanaging and relying on filtered reports that tell him what he wants to hear. Subordinates hide problems to protect themselves, and reality gets warped until it collapses under its own weight. In Xi's system, loyalty always outranks competence. Promotions go to those who repeat slogans, not those who perform the best in the field. Officers act politically, not strategically. They focus on survival, not success. Over time, that mindset has reshaped the PLA. It's not just a military anymore, it's a political instrument. The weapons are cutting edge, but the thinking behind them has slowed. Strategy bends to ideology, and initiative fades away. History has already shown how this ends. Under Mao, loyalty mattered more than skill, and the results were disastrous. Xi's model follows the same pattern, just dressed up for the modern age. The PLA looks powerful, but the power is fragile. The purge also drains morale. Ambition shrinks, creativity dies, and fear moves down the ranks like a slow leak. Young officers quickly learn the unspoken rule: loyalty first, ability second. Study sessions replace initiative. Even foreign observers have picked up on it. Rapid purges, sudden promotions, robotic conformity — these aren't signs of confidence, they're signs of strain. From the outside, China's army looks unstoppable. Inside, it's running on fear more than trust. The October 2025 purge makes one truth hard to ignore. Loyalty has become both the PLA's greatest strength and its biggest weakness. Skill matters only when it serves the party. Every mission, promotion, and command decision is filtered through allegiance. China's military looks solid, but beneath that surface, it's held together not by trust or unity, but by fear. Internationally, the purge rattled China's carefully crafted image of control and confidence. Beijing has long sold itself as a fortress of stability, the dependable giant that keeps its house in order while the rest of the world wobbles. But when top generals start disappearing without explanation, that illusion starts to crack. Foreign governments begin asking uneasy questions. If Xi can't trust his own generals, how solid is the system under him? Who's steering nuclear strategy? Who's in charge of Taiwan operations? And who's picking up the phone if a crisis flares with Washington or Tokyo? In a region already tense, silence isn't strength. It's a recipe for miscalculation. Taiwan and South Korea are watching this very closely, like hawks circling a brewing storm. For Taiwan, it's personal. The island sits just 100 miles from China's coastline, under constant pressure from PLA war games and daily jet incursions. Lin Xiangyang, the recently purged Eastern Theater commander, led many of those operations. His sudden removal raises real questions. Is Xi clearing the decks for a more bold move? Or is the PLA too shaken to act decisively? Taipei isn't waiting to find out. In 2025, it increased its defense budget by 8% to about $20 billion, pouring funds into missiles, drones, and cyber defense. Officials see both opportunity and risk here. A distracted PLA could make mistakes, but one wrong move over the Taiwan Strait could turn a tense patrol into a full-blown crisis. South Korea feels the ripples too. Seoul knows that the PLA's Northern Theater Command shares a border with North Korea, where small missteps can spiral fast. A weakened PLA might fumble coordination with Pyongyang or misread its provocations, and so Seoul is preparing. It is worth noting that Seoul and Washington carried out major joint exercises in August, when rumors of all this first started flying around. This speaks to routine readiness planning rather than immediate reaction to the purge. The thinking is simple. When your neighbor starts rearranging his guard dogs, it's best to make sure that your fence holds up. The impact doesn't stop with the military. Investors, diplomats, and global corporations are recalibrating their risk models. China's official defense budget hit roughly $246 billion in 2025, up about 7.2%. Yet dozens of senior officers have been abruptly purged. That's more than a military story, that's a signal of deeper instability. Many of those ousted ran procurement and weapons development programs. Their absence means audits, delays, and frozen projects. In a country where transparency is thin, that kind of uncertainty spooks investors. Diplomatically, the optics aren't any better. The purge tells the world that Xi values loyalty more than competence and control more than capability. Regional journalists in Japan and India interpret that as a sign that China is becoming more defensive and inward-looking. That ambiguity is dangerous. Is Beijing really ready for confrontation, or just less predictable in how it picks one? A Chinese defense review noted a sharp increase in business anxiety about doing operations in China, citing arbitrary detentions and the sudden disappearance of executives. Add a military purge into that mix, and the fear factor rises. For investors and diplomats alike, the logic is straightforward. China still matters, but predictability matters too. When top military figures can vanish overnight, the world starts second-guessing China's next move. There's also a quiet intelligence angle here, and Xi Jinping probably knows it. In spy circles, the period right after a purge is known as the window of chaos. It's when confusion reigns, hierarchy shuffle, and loyalties begin to waver. Western agencies like the CIA, MI6, and Japan's Cabinet Intelligence and Research Office are keeping close tabs on that window. They're watching for sidelined officers who might feel bitter enough to talk. It's not just human intelligence. Operational shakeups are a hacker's dream. New officers inherit old passwords, security protocols slip, and software updates, they get delayed. That's how breaches happen. The timing couldn't be worse, since all of the purged officers are high-ranking individuals, and there is a lot of sensitive information that can potentially be farmed. The irony is sharp, isn't it? In trying to close internal loopholes, Xi may have opened a few external ones. The purge's ripples don't stop at China's borders. They hit the economy pretty hard too. The PLA isn't just a military machine, it is a massive economic engine tied to factories, tech firms, and construction. When top generals vanish, entire contracts stall, and billions in projects grind to a halt. Many of the purged officers were power brokers, connecting military contracts to civilian suppliers. One state aerospace firm in Shaanxi halted production of its J-20 stealth jets for 3 months in 2024, after a senior liaison officer was detained. That's not just a hiccup. That's a strategic delay in a global arms race. Across China, the defense sector employs more than 2 million people. When the Rocket Force purge hit before, it exposed about $15 billion in misused funds. Shares in China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation and China North Industries Group fell between 8 to 12% in a week. In Sichuan and Xianxi, up to 50,000 workers reportedly lost their jobs. Even civilian tech firms tied to military drones and AI programs saw export delays, totaling about $4 billion a year. For an economy already dealing with a lot, this isn't reform, this is self-inflicted pain. The tech race takes a hit too. China and the US are neck and neck in AI and unmanned warfare, with Beijing spending roughly $10 billion last year on military drones. But when the generals behind those programs disappear, funding dries up, and the labs go quiet. It's like pulling the plug halfway through an update. Pretty much everything freezes. For Xi, though, the purge isn't just about corruption or modernization. It's about legacy and survival. Since removing term limits in 2018, he placed himself at the center of every decision that matters. His vision of national rejuvenation depends not on strong institutions, but on his personal authority. And the military, with its reach and prestige, has always been his biggest worry. Xi has studied the Soviet collapse obsessively, and believes losing control of the army and power was what doomed Moscow. That fear has now become policy. Every ambitious officer looks like a future rival, and every whisper sounds like a plot. Interestingly, comparisons to Mao Zedong are hard to avoid. Both men distrusted institutions, built personality cults, and used purges to enforce loyalty. But while Mao's chaos stayed within China's borders, Xi's sends shockwaves through global markets. He has to look calm abroad while tightening his grip at home, which is a balancing act that's only getting harder. The long-term effects are already visible. The next generation of PLA leaders has been molded entirely under Xi's rule. They learned that silence is safety, loyalty is everything, and ideology beats skill. They'll be obedient, but they'll also be hesitant and risk-averse. The hardware might be modern, but the mindset is brittle. And that's the paradox. The more Xi tightens control, the weaker the system becomes. Each purge removes a rival, but it also drains trust, experience, and initiative. Fear enforces obedience, but kills creativity. Over time, the entire structure narrows until it rests on one man. That's not stability, it's fragility wearing a uniform. Xi Jinping may be the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao, but power doesn't cancel paranoia. It just deepens it. This purge might tighten his grip today, but it also breeds resentment among the very people he depends on. These aren't the old warlords of the past, they're technocrats, engineers, and strategists who dedicated decades to service only to be erased overnight. History offers a clear warning. Purges don't silence dissent. They bury it. And buried dissent doesn't vanish, it ferments like stinky tofu. Xi has removed every alternate voice and dismantled every safety valve. There's no rival power base, no heir apparent, no institution ready to absorb the shock when he's gone. That pressure can't sit forever. It might not happen soon, but when Xi eventually weakens, whether through age, crisis, or just exhaustion, China could face exactly what he fears the most. That's a power vacuum at the top of the most centralized system on Earth. What we're seeing isn't just control. It's the quiet setup for a future succession storm. At the end of the day, this 2025 purge has done what it was intended to do. It has tightened Xi Jinping's grip, but the cost runs deeper than most headlines suggest. China often looks monolithic, disciplined, even unstoppable. But beneath that surface, the system survives by shedding its own. Every few years, another layer disappears. The message here is simple. Loyalty protects you, until it doesn't. That kind of volatility isn't just a side effect. It's baked into the system. Decisions aren't driven by strategy alone. They're shaped by fear, by internal rivalries, and by the constant need to stay ahead of betrayal. That combination creates strength. But it also makes the country unpredictable. And here's the irony. By purging his generals, Xi didn't just silence dissent, he silenced the warnings that help keep a leader grounded. Now he's surrounded by loyalty instead of truth. Obedience has replaced judgment, and that's a dangerous place for any leader to be. One thing is certain. This purge will be remembered not just as a show of control, but as a defining moment of his reign. The PLA might still march in perfect formation, but behind that rhythm, they're walking on eggshells. History shows us that regimes built on fear rarely fall to outside forces, they collapse from within, especially when silence replaces the truth. In his quest to secure China's future, Xi may have made one of his own greatest vulnerabilities. Thanks for watching.